Welcome to ISAP, the International Forum for Sustainable Asia and the Pacific 2021, organized by IGES, the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies. We are pleased to start the Thematic Track session number 3, entitled Proud to be a Change Agent, Implications from Award Winners of Fiscal Year 2020 IGES President's Award. I am Yasuo Takahashi, Executive Director of IGES, and I will moderate this session today. The session will be 60 minutes long, and I hope you will enjoy the presentations and discussions. Impact generation lies at the core of IGES activities, aiming to facilitate the transition towards realizing sustainable societies in close collaboration with diverse stakeholders. IGES President's Awards are an initiative established in fiscal year 2018 with the purpose of promoting and sharing outstanding impactful cases and research activities by IGES researchers. In this session, 2 recent award-winning cases will be introduced. The award for the most outstanding impact case was awarded to enhancing the capacities in ASEAN governments to develop and implement climate change adaptation policies and projects. And the award for the best publication was awarded to IGES Policy Report, Waste Management During the COVID-19 Pandemic, from Response to Recovery. The presentations will be followed by a discussion on what is required in terms of research and activities in the future for IGES to fulfill its role as a change agent. I believe this session will be a valuable occasion to disseminate the leading cases of impact generation by recent IGES activities and to discuss measures to further strengthen our role as a changing agent in the Asia-Pacific region. So now let's start the session. I would like to invite our first speakers, Ms. Pimadi Keaokiria, Program Manager at Regional Center in Bangkok, and Dr. Shivapram Prabhakar, Principal Policy Researcher of Adaptation and Water Area, IGES Headquarters. They will present on enhancing the capacities of ASEAN governments to develop and implement climate change adaptation policies and projects. So Berun-san and Prabhakar-san, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Takachi Chocho. Can you see my screen?
Yes, please.
Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity for us to present on the achievement of the ASEAN project on disaster risk reduction by integrating climate change into risk assessment. The award was testimony of our committed effort to engage and support ASEAN's effort on building a safer and adaptive, inclusive, resilient region. Before I go into the details of my presentation, allow me to run through today's overview. The presentation will cover 4 key areas, including the overview of the project, the approach and activities, key results and output, and last but not least, the flood vulnerabilities, which will be covered by my colleague, Dr. Prabhakar. The ASEAN project was funded by Japan ASEAN Integration Fund, and it was implemented between October 2018 to December 2020 under the framework of the ASEAN Committee on Disaster Management and the Admiral Work Program. The project engaged all 10 ASEAN countries, focusing on capacity building and risk assessment and risk mapping by incorporating climate change impact at the river basin level on flood and landslide hazard. The project established pilot study sites, which included Myanmar and Laos for the first phase, really to demonstrate the process of risk assessment and risk mapping, including incorporation of climate downscaling results, enhanced technical capacities of government officials and national institutions, and really to familiarize them with common and latest methodologies through hands-on training and on-site implementation, enhanced dialogue among key stakeholders and approach sustainability through multi-stakeholder engagement and project design, and really throughout the whole project, signifying the ownership, the process, and the results, and lastly, to promote best practice and knowledge exchange in the region. The key project output included guidelines and training modules, hazard and risk maps. This page summarizes the implementation structure of the project under the ASEAN framework. This project rests under the ASEAN Disaster Portfolio under the ASEAN Committee on Disaster Management, which was led by the Working Group on Prevention and Mitigation. It was implemented by the consortium, which included IGES, CTI, and ADPC. IGES, as the leading coordinating agency, worked closely with ASEAN member states through the ASEAN Secretariat, JIVE management team, the pilot countries, and partners. The results are reported by the working group at the ACDM meeting. This next slide is the implementation flow of the project, which included baseline study, field survey, and case visits, which were designed and implemented in a complementary manner, as shown in this diagram. Field survey were conducted in Laos and Myanmar in 4 study areas: Sedon, Pukun, Bago, and Dongji. A detailed assessment, data collection, structured hands-on training exercises, adopting the learning by doing approach was carried out. On the other hand, on-site training and case visits were organized for cross-learning, application on the ground interventions, and outcome contribute basin scale. This section briefly highlights the key results and the outputs. Between 2018 to 2020, the project has carried out 26 activities altogether, engaging over 600 participants from 50 agencies. The key outputs include case studies of pilot study, 2 guidelines on integrating climate change projection into flood and landslide risk assessment. This was endorsed by 10 ASEAN countries. It provides a holistic overview aimed to assist decision-making and sector planners to prepare climate-induced risks and promote culture of safety and resilience. The project also produced over 100 hazard maps and risk maps for selected river basin under various scenarios. And here are a few examples of flood hazard maps. Flood risk maps in river basin scale and local scale. Our project also contributed to the global efforts on risk reduction, including the contributing paper on UNDRR Global Assessment Report 2022, which will be published online by May 2022. The project also engaged community and local authorities through participatory processes to broaden the impact of involvement, collaboration, and awareness raising. It also conducted vulnerability assessment and over 800 sample surveys to conduct household damage data. Now I would like to invite my colleague, Dr. Prabhakar, to present on the flood vulnerability part. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben-san, and thank you very much, Takashi-san, for giving this opportunity. Now, building upon what Ben-san has presented, the overview of the project, I would like to go a little bit deep into how vulnerabilities that we learned from our project can inform the responses. And I'm limiting my presentation just to the flood-related vulnerabilities in Lao, Pedia, and Myanmar because of the time constraints. Now, if you look at the range of the disaster risk reduction measures, we can categorize them into 3 types of measures. One is the risk-based approaches, vulnerability-based approaches, and capacity-based approaches. In the case of the risk-based approaches, as they suggest, they are very effective in reducing the risk and the net impacts of the disasters or climate change. However, measures like erecting a dike or an embankment, they can mask the sensitivities, and hence the sensitivities may remain the same while the impacts are reduced. So in the case of an extreme event, these dikes and the river banks may fail, and the sensitivities may actually come into play, resulting into net higher impacts than the projected. So it is very important for us to understand vulnerabilities. And in the case of the vulnerability-based approaches, the emphasis is on understanding the sensitivities and how to reduce those sensitivities so that the project will lead to addressing any uncertainties that are related to climate change or uncertainties related to planning and process. So that is the main emphasis of our project. for conducting the vulnerability assessments. Before we went on to conducting the vulnerability assessments, what we did was we did an extensive literature review and stakeholder consultations to understand what are the basic design elements of the vulnerability methodology that we should develop. And we came up with the 5 design elements. And these design elements includes, following mixed methods approaches and employing indicators that are robustly screened based on the literature reviews as well as stakeholder consultations and things like that. Now, in terms of the mixed methods approach, what we did was we developed the quantitative damage functions or vulnerability functions, which are the relationships between depth and duration of the flood as well as the damage, either in terms of the percentage or in terms of the economic component. And in terms of the damage functions, we have to, what we understood from the project is that they need to be space and time dimensions, because these functions tend to change for every geographical region and socioeconomic context. And hence we had to conduct extensive survey techniques and implement household surveys to downscale the damage curves to the context of the project location. Now, there are 2 types of damage curves are developed in general, the empirical damage curves and synthetic damage curves. And in our project, what we did was we combined these 2 literature-based approaches as well as the household survey-related damage curves. And we conducted expert judgment workshop to bring the agreement between these 2 curves that are developed. So as I said, the robust sampling design was used to cover various geographical conditions within the floodplain, as well as to cover various socioeconomic elements. For example, in the project, we have included the physical element of residential building, as well as the socioeconomic elements of livelihoods and human and animal health. And these are some of the demographic information about the project. Now, from the results, I'm going to present 8 important key messages that are relevant for the response and mitigation measures. Now, the number 1 message is that we have found that in the flood-prone areas, the stilted houses are backbone for the flood resilience. And we have seen that 84% of the total building stock in Myanmar are stilted, whereas only 74% are stilted in Lao PDR. And this is very much closely related to how the early warning and mobility of the people and the high value assets are related. For example, in Myanmar, and this is also the second important message. In Myanmar, we have seen that the flood damage will not be very severe until the flood level reaches 3 meters. Whereas in the case of Lao PDR, we have seen that even 1.4 meters of the flood can cause significant damage. And this is because even though in Lao PDR, we have 74% of the total building stock stilted, we have seen that many of the high value assets are located in the ground floor. And this actually leads to the significant damages. So this is where, while designing the early warning system, we need to understand what is the kind of the building stock and how soon the people are able to mobilize these high value assets to safer location has to be taken into consideration. The third important message is that we have seen in terms of the agriculture, which is a main livelihood for many of the rural communities there, the resilience of the rice varieties to flooding is very important. If you compare between Myanmar and Lao PDR rice response to flood, we see that in Myanmar there is a linear relationship. However, until 6 feet, you will not, the damage is only 24%. However, in the case of the Lao PDR, the damage is 40% even at the lowest flood level. That means that the rice crop resilience is very low, and very important to cultivate varieties which are resilient to flooding there. The fourth important message is we need to measure the yield losses in terms of the income loss, but not in terms of tons per hectare, because during the flood years, the commodities are highly priced, and any amount of the crop that is saved by the farmers, they can provide multiple alternative benefits. They don't have to depend on the market, and whatever the commodity that they saved from the flood can provide higher income compared to the normal year. The fifth important message that we found is diversification of the livelihoods is very important. Both in case of the Myanmar and Lao PDR, we have seen that the single income source households, they face nearly 40% of the income loss from the flood related losses. However, the households which are having double income and triple income, they could able to withstand losses, and even the losses were also very few. And we have observed that it is more likely for farmers to have more than one income in these flood-prone areas, which indicates that the resilience is already been built up by the local institutional mechanisms. And obviously, the salary holders, they are the least affected by the floods. So it goes to say without that, the least dependency on agriculture income is very important for flood resilience. The sixth important message is the single flood event can double the poverty impacts, and we have seen that both in Myanmar as well as in Lao PDR, the poverty is doubled within the one flood event, and this is only from in terms of the income. But if you measure in terms of the consumption aspect, which is basically the basis for which the poverty is measured, the responses by the local governments and NGOs in terms of providing financial relief as well as food related relief or health related relief, they can actually bridge a lot of the poverty gap created by the floods. The seventh important message here is we need to design the health facilities not just based on the total population that we are catering to, but we need to look into what are the vulnerable groups as well as the depth and duration of the floods. So we have seen that in both the locations there is a high number of children which are affected, marginally higher in Lao PDR in terms of the children as well as elderly, and also the number of work days lost in both these locations is very high because of the impact on the health. So these aspects needs to be taken into consideration while designing the relief and rehabilitation measures. And finally, we often promote livestock as a resilience measure. However, we need to look into what kind of livestock is very important. Now we have seen in our study project locations that there is a high dependency on poultry, and this is most vulnerable to flood-related damages. So we have seen that the up to flood depth of 1.5 meters is very critical for saving livestock cattle, and any flood beyond this level is very detrimental, and flooding of 15 to 20 days is also a critical level. So we need to take these into consideration while providing the early warning, so that the community members can safely evacuate these important assets to safer locations. So I end there my presentation, and I welcome any comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Bas and Prabhakar-san, for your very comprehensive presentation on your project. And I would like to congratulate you and your team again on this excellent results of this project. So as you can see in the presentation, this project is an outcome through a close collaboration with the ASEAN Secretariat. So I'm very pleased to welcome Dr. Yanti Jarante, Head of Disaster Management and Humanitarian Assistance Division, Sustainable Development Directorate, ASEAN Secretariat. So, Dr. Yanti, thank you so much for your attendance, and I would like to ask you to make comments on this project.
Okay, thank you very much. May I confirm if my audio can be heard well?
Yes, you can clearly hear your voice.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Takahashi, and also the of IGES for the invitation. Also, thank you to Dr. Prabhakar for the comprehensive presentation, as well as to Ms. Fimpadi on the close cooperation between IGES and ASEAN Secretariat. We have really valued this cooperation, and we support and we call for strengthened engagement between IGES and the ASEAN Secretariat, not only with disaster management and humanitarian assistance division, as well as cooperation on disaster management, but we know that IGES and ASEAN Secretariat have worked very strongly over time, particularly this year, cooperation in related to environmental issue, climate change. So it's my honor to participate in the International Forum for Sustainable Asia and the Pacific, so ISEP. So and also I've been involved and attended ISEP before in my capacity working with United Nations University IES in Tokyo. Let me outline some lessons learned on the cooperation between ASEAN and IGES, but of course also relevant to other partners that we would like, we have learned from this cooperation, as well as what we would like to see further. So in relation to disaster management, so first of all, ASEAN has adopted the ADMER Work Program 2021-2025. So our work related to disaster management, of course, aims to implement the ADMER, so ASEAN Agreement on Disaster Management and Emergency Response, which is supported by the 5-year program of ADMER Work Program. So for this year, it's ADMER Work Program 2021-2025. This program aims, or this work program aims to enhance disaster risk reduction, disaster management through strengthening cooperation, capacity building, innovation, partnership as well. And this is also what we would like that each project also support this one, the outputs or the aim of this work program. Furthermore, there are 5 priority programs that are within this ADMER Work Program. So projects, we highly appreciate the project with IGES, but also this is something for the future that any projects that will come that is to be coordinated or collaborated with needs to meet the priorities that we outlined here. In addition, there are also principles of working here. We look at issue of institutionalization and localization. We look at issue of strengthening protection, gender inclusion, innovation, strengthening on the role of science, and so on. So this is important that in general, any cooperation, as what we have seen with cooperation with IGES in this project, meet these priorities and also adhering to the principles in the ADMER Work Program. So that's one principle that we see. The second principle that we would also like to highlight is that we also want to see that the outcomes and the referables maximize the benefits to the member states. This is very important. We have different capacity of the 10 ASEAN member states. While one countries have had very strong roles and also very strong disaster management, disaster risk reduction, and emergency response, others are not. And so partners and projects that understand this different capacity needs is important. And we also want to enhance, we want to maximize the benefits of projects, outcomes, deliverables to the ASEAN member states. In addition to maximizing the benefit to the member states, we also would like to see that the projects identify future or potential pathways towards institutionalizing these deliverables and outcome. What we meant by that, for example, on this project, there had been training, there had been outputs that are guidelines and outputs identifying possible pathways, future pathways by which different member states or individual member states can institutionalize and utilize the outcome, the deliverables further is very important. For example, when NDMOs is related to, there are agencies that are related to training in the member states. So ensuring that the deliverables from this project and which then be utilized for future trainings of NDMOs, but also other ministries in the member state is important, and that's what we would like to see. Thirdly, we also learned that policy outcomes that are relevant at the regional level is important. So in addition to maximizing benefits to the member states, we would also like to see how can the results from particular member states or case study, for example, on this project on 2 member states will also be relevant and be utilized at the regional level, and hence policy outcomes relevant to the regional level is very important. When we say policy outcomes, it also needs to be scientifically informed, and we understand, of course, IGES has had strong role in bridging the role of science and policy, and this is what we would like to see. In addition, of course, ASEAN and ASEAN Secretariat are also looking for policy outcome or products that are relevant to be communicated to policymakers and broader public. So guidelines at the regional level, declaration, if we can go to until that highest level, as well as, for example, policy brief that will be read by the policymakers, the public on activities that are implemented by ASEAN as something that we would see further. So I guess these are the 3 key messages that we have seen relevant from our ASEAN cooperation with IGES, and of course we will call. We are discussing with the project team on phase 2 of this project and continuation following identification of gap. This is what we would like to see future, but also I think what we learned from cooperation in this project, we will also utilize it for our cooperation with other partners. So finally, congratulations to the 2 award-winning cases for receiving the awards from IGES President for the most outstanding impact case and the best publication. Thank you very much, Professor Takahashi.
Thank you very much, Dr. Arianti, for your very positive comments and encouragements. And after hearing your comments, I believe that it is critical, I think, for IGES to keep close collaboration and cooperation with local stakeholders in the region, such as ASEAN Secretariat and the member countries, throughout the process, all the process, from the project design and implementation and outreach, or utilizing the outcome of the project. And I also recognize that ASEAN is, of course, one of the most important partner for IGES to contribute to the sustainable and resilient future of ASEAN region. So I really look forward to further strengthening our collaboration with ASEAN Secretariat and member countries in the coming years. Thank you very much. Then I would like to invite our second speaker, Dr. Premakurara Jagat Digira Gamararage, Director of IGES CCET. He will present on the IGES policy report called Waste Management During the COVID-19 Pandemic, from Response to Recovery. So Kumara-san, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Takahashi Sacho, giving a very kind introduction. So let me share my screen. I hope that you can see my screen and hear my voice.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. It is my great pleasure to join this session today to share our result of the research activities jointly with UNEP ITC. To the presentation, I would like to briefly explain the introduction and key messages, finding, discussions, recommendations, and the follow-up actions, what we have been taken after develop this joint publication called Waste Management during the COVID-19 pandemic, from response to recovery. This is a joint publication IGES-CCT has developed in 2020 with UNEP ITC to respond the need of the national and local governments in managing their waste. Especially we look at healthcare waste because COVID-19 is created more healthcare waste under the COVID-19 pandemic. It was based on the quick desk review and the questionnaire survey conducted covering 15 countries, including Asia, Africa, and Latin America. More than 24 researchers and the contributors have involved in this report, even though I am today going to present it by myself. It is focused on the policies and also the practice in managing healthcare waste. We look at both before and during the COVID-19 pandemic, including both the developed and developing countries. The report also reviews good practices and immediate responses and actions taken by the developing countries, especially to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic and the waste management. And also we look at any response to the recovery and redesign their waste management systems. When it comes to the key messages, so we try to look at the key messages for both the policy perspectives and also the practitioners' perspectives. For policymakers' perspective, so we found that COVID-19 brought huge challenges to waste management, especially those countries and the cities which had inadequate waste management systems already. The ones who faced the most vulnerable situations with coping with the COVID-19 waste management systems. And most governments didn't have emergency plans and preparations, such kind of situations. So that's one reason the countries to more vulnerable to the COVID-19 situation. We also found some of them, most of them started to introduce immediate policies, regulations, and actions, but they were inadequate and also piecemeal efforts rather than comprehensive considerations. Also, we found good governance and policy making plays a key role for emergency and also the management and the recovery phases, in addition to the technology and financial capacities that required to handle the healthcare waste management in the countries, especially in developing countries. Also, the report tried to identify some key messages for the practitioners' perspectives. So what we see is, especially when handling the healthcare waste management in the healthcare centers, there should be a proper segregation, packaging, and storage of potentially contaminated materials from other waste, because lack of this separation at the healthcare facilities at the source, most of the non-infected waste mixed with the infected waste made more waste to be treated properly. And also, the cities and the countries started adjusting some waste management systems, collection frequency, and treatment options based on the priority, as well as a continuation of the separated collection of recyclable materials based on the needs of their local situation and the conditions. At the same time, there were a need of strict control and the availability of using personal protective equipment, PPE, and introduce other precautionary practices to ensure the health and safety of waste management workers, especially waste collectors who are informal sectors and the women and the smaller medium enterprises who involved in the waste management activities in developing countries. We also found the securing their livelihood and the life of these informal sector, women and the medium small businesses are very important, and that is the groups that's mostly vulnerable in managing the waste, especially in healthcare waste in the COVID-19 situations. Now let me share briefly a couple of key findings of the study, which gave us to come up some kind of a recommendation in the report. So one thing, as you can see here, the lack of data is one of the main issues in developing countries. They found when it's going to make evidence-based plans and the policies to respond to the emergency situations, and at the same time to making the midterm and the long-term recovery plans for the improvement of the waste management in the countries. And also we found even though the available data shows us the picture is not good in the adequacy of the waste management, healthcare waste management, even before the COVID-19 situation. The most countries doesn't have proper healthcare waste management systems. According to WHO report, it says like only 3 out of 7 healthcare facilities in developing countries had the basic waste management services in the pre-COVID situations. So that's make the issue with most developing countries to quickly face the healthcare waste management system with the COVID-19 situation. At the same time, we found the countries and the cities had to face new challenges brought by the COVID-19 pandemic, in addition to their normal situations. So the couple of them are unpredicted increase in the generation of healthcare waste. And the data shows some cities and the countries, some cases, it was double the generation rates within a couple of months, and making the huge pressure for local governments and the national government to handling and treatment of this vastly increased generation of healthcare waste. And also we found the increase of the amount of plastic waste, especially due to PPE, and how to treat this waste is a challenge for the healthcare facilities and also the cities. At the same time, because of COVID-19 pandemic situation, so most of waste collection systems suspend their source separation and recycling activities that are resulted in increasing amount of mixed waste, including infected waste, which is needed to treat properly. Also, they created more direct impact to waste workers, informal sector, and their livelihood. So these new challenges are bring more vulnerable the cities and the countries which didn't have sufficient healthcare waste management systems. And also we found in our studies having policies and legislations tools not guarantee that they are extensive enough, sufficient, and enforced both before and during the pandemic, because we found that quickly after COVID-19 and before the COVID-19, there are some policies already available within the countries, but their implementation at the city level and the healthcare facility level is very low when in most developing countries. At the same time, most national and local governments found it difficult in implementing those policies due to many reasons, including some political, technical, and financial issues. So that's make them to understand, even though policies they cannot implement them in proper. In this background, actually, what we're trying to do, and we look at the COVID-19 pandemic and the healthcare waste management systems, and look at discussions the importance of improving healthcare waste management and increasing resilience against COVID-19. So that's need to be looked at in broader manner rather than waste management perspectives. For this, national and the local governments need to redesign their healthcare waste management systems in the medium and the long term, building sound institutions and capacities of agents. So in that sense, we develop a kind of a recommendations in discussion with the findings and also the member states and the cities. What we identified in three steps of the recommendations using IGES RRR framework and make the recommendations based on this framework. So what we see in the immediate situations, the countries and the cities should take immediate actions to ensure health and safety measures, preparing contingency plans and introducing temporary treatment measures as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic. But that is not enough. So in the midterm, they need to develop recovery plans, including more evidence-based and sustainable practices using 3R and waste hierarchy. These are more, they have a lot of guidance, and the guidelines have already developed WHO and others. In the long term, what we understand it is the need to more integration of the healthcare waste management to the green, low carbon and resilient plans and actions, in addition to the waste management plans. That is very important when we're looking at this kind of COVID-19 kind of situations, how to respond quickly in these immediate emergency situations. As a follow-up action of this study, actually this study gave CCT, IGES CCT a good opportunity to look at our research activities, because this is the first time for us to look at healthcare waste management in line with integrated or holistic waste management in the cities or countries. So it gives us more opportunity to explore the issue in more integrated manner, and also making more partnership with other agencies. So we start in the two main priority areas to work on the subject. One is we are building more networking and the partnership with other international and development partners to share our experience, these research findings to the wider community. And also we involved in publishing a couple of academic and also policy papers based on these findings. Some are already published and some are in the review process. At the same time, we further elaborate the good practices, what we learned from the study, to document them as a good practices and make these practices as a peer learning and training for both policymakers and the practitioners with other agencies. On the other hand, so we have been providing practically research and technical support to the national and the local governments to build their capacities in developing sustainable and climate-smart healthcare waste management systems in line with their commitments that some governments have already made with WHO at the recently concluded COP26. So we are working in supporting currently working in Africa, supporting Kenya and Ethiopia in developing healthcare, greening the healthcare waste management plans for both countries and African regional plan with UNEP. And also we work some South Asian countries like Nepal and Sri Lanka in developing their healthcare management system with the UNDP. And also we found This is very important. This is our experience to share with Japanese cities and the Japanese private companies who are working in the healthcare waste management project and capacity building activities in other countries. So we already had developed some good communication and sharing experience with the Yokohama city and some companies in Yokohama in based on our experience from this study and how to design a new healthcare waste management programs in the Philippines based on the city-to-city cooperation and the private sector participation. So that's another opportunity for us based on this study. For that, actually, we published this report in both languages, in English and Japanese. So that's main output of the study. As I mentioned, so finally, this is a huge contribution from the lot of researchers, authors, contributors, and reviewers, and also our financial support from the Ministry of Environment, Japan, through UNEP ITC to do this study. So I want to thank all of them. At this moment, without their support, we cannot complete this study in a timely manner to make some policy recommendations. So this is the end of my presentation. So thank you once again for kind attention. If anyone interested in this report, you can visit our website and download it from there for free of charge. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. I believe that, first of all, this project report was very timely, first of all, and also very comprehensive, including emergency responses and also a long-term redesign of the waste management system. And also, as you mentioned, it is a very good opportunity to expand your network with a very broad range of stakeholders. So thank you very much. So I would like to now invite Dr. Yasuhiko Hotta, Program Director of Sustainable Consumption and Production Area of IGES, to make comments from the viewpoint of the Program Director. So Hotta-san, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Kumara-san and also Takahashi-san, for this opportunity. And then I like to make my comments from the two perspectives. First one is, as Takahashi-san mentioned, as a colleague of the Sustainable Consumption Production Unit, why this could be very timely. And what I observed was very much depending on the contents and expertise, which already developed by the CCT team and fits to the emerging needs. And so they have developed this very timely publication building on what we have already done. But also what I observed was they quickly, even though it is under this COVID pandemic situation, try to get information from the field, try to utilize a question survey through the network they already established. So this kind of the information from the field is very, very important. And that was possible, as Kumara mentioned, the network and trust they established through their activities in the past. So they could promote this question survey in relatively quick manner to the very important agencies and actors who is engaging in the healthcare waste management and also response to the COVID-19 situation. Also, I also noticed that the very close collaboration with co-researchers from the outside of the IGES played a key role for developing this timely publication. So it's very strange to say the although, how to say, this is serving to the emerging global issue, global context was important, but because based on this local experience, very long-term establishment of network could, how to say, respond immediately to this emerging global context. And of course, very important thing was, as Kumara mentioned, stable and flexible budget. So if we don't have a stable and flexible budget, we couldn't respond to this very emerging and immediate issue that has emerged. So it was very important. That is my comment as a colleague of the SCP. Also, I have a hat of the Vice President of the Asia Pacific region, Asia Pacific Roundtable for SCP. So from that perspective, I think this work is going beyond the issues of waste management. And that is to say, in the past 5 years or so, we start to observe mainstreaming of policy discussion on sustainability transition to achieve long-term and mid-term goals such as decarbonization, zero plastic waste discharge, and so on. And I think the COVID-19 situation intensified this trend and the requirement for the real transition of the social technical system. So I think this report touched upon these needs by referring to the concept like this from the shift from response to recover to redesign and the needs for the sustainable low carbon health systems. So for example, like we are now observing like the sustainability discussion has shifted from pollution prevention to resource efficiency and the life cycles to one planet living or like a transition. So this new trend of the transition requires more focus on the social concerns and the social technical system, and then happiness and well-being of the people. So I think this work also suggesting in that direction. Thank you very much. And congratulations for your work.
Thank you very much, Hoto-san, for your very valuable comments, including the importance of the budget, of course. So, unfortunately, you have only 5 or 7 minutes. So, but I would like to make a brief discussion. So, I would like to make one short question for each speakers, and so please make a very concise 1 minute response to my question. So I would like to ask speakers from IGES, namely 3 award winners and Hoto-san, what is the key lesson learned through this project, and in particular, what is the most important point for IGES activities and outreach as a change agent? And also, I'd like to ask Dr. Rianti from ASEAN Secretariat, what do you expect most, IGES, most in the future activities? So I would like to start from Berun-san. Berun-san, what is your lesson learned? In 1 minute, please. Berun-san? Okay.
Yeah. I think for us, it's important for us to have this participatory approach, really to engage not only at the national and local level, but really also the community as well. And I think this is something that we also brought to the project, although it was not planned in advance, but this is something that we developed. And I think it's very important. And I think this is something that we should continue to build on. Perhaps Prabhakar-san, if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, Prabhakar-san, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Takahashi-san. 4 important messages from my experience. One is we need to engage with these countries in a long-term manner. That means that we should not be entering the country by just for one project and then leaving them. So the long-term engagement is very important for critically understanding the local issues and designing the location-specific solutions. Second lesson that I learned is we need to have hand-holding exercises with the local stakeholders, not just organizing training sessions somewhere in 1 week or 5 days, but throughout the project having a constant engagement is very important for ideal transfer of the expertise and the knowledge. And thirdly, we need to engage with the local policy process. When we design the project, of course, we will have separate funding from coming from donor agency. But while we implement the project, we need to identify a beneficiary program or policy at the national level and try to engage with the stakeholders who are implementing those programs and policies so that their capacity is engaged, and then those particular policy and the program process are successful even after our project is receding from the implementation country. And finally, we need to follow the complete life cycle of the project. That means that science to policy, not just designing one small part of policy related or science related, but we need to implement from from the life cycle perspective so that our outputs are directly useful to them, and also there is also a proper transfer of the what you call ownership to the beneficiary stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prabhakar-san, for your very valuable comments. So now I'd like to ask you, Dr. Yanti, what do you expect from IGES in the future?
Thank you very much, Takahashi-san. Let us reiterate the 3 expectations for our future cooperation with IGES. So first of all, supporting the implementation of ATMAR work plan outputs and principles in a comprehensive manner to ensure that ASEAN achieve the implementation of the ATMAR work program, to maximizing benefits to the ASEAN member states, as well as determining strategies for institutionalization, future institutionalization of the deliverables, and finally, institutional and policy relevance at the regional level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Yanti, and I really appreciate your collaboration for this event, and also I believe we can have a more good project in the future, collaborative project between ASEAN and IGES. So thank you very much for your cooperation. Now, I'd like to ask Kumara-san, what do you learn from your experience?
Yes, thank you, Takahashi. So I think there were 2 things that related to the lessons what I learned from this work. One is I found like a COVID-19 situation and the wealth management show us the each city or each country had to make a basic, because the ones who have a basic, at least at the minimum level of services, they are little bit not vulnerable when compared to the ones who don't have still basic of waste management. So that can be a start because each city or country cannot do everything one time, but they can start practicing basics. So that's the one thing. And then we found that the importance of the integrating the different sectors. I think it's something related to the governance, but that can be started from the healthcare facility when I'm talking about health waste management, because even within the healthcare facility, there are different departments working in the different manner. But when you want to manage the healthcare waste in proper manner, they have to work together with one plan. And then looking at that, let's go up to the city and then the regional and to the national. And I feel it is same in the global. So how to work in integrated manner with the different sectors, different departments is very important when this kind of a situation. I think that's my two lessons. Thank you.
Thank you, Kumara-san, for your comments. And finally, Hotta-san, what do you learn from these experiences?
Yes, I think one of the most important thing is, as Prabhakar mentioned, this long-term commitment and partnership. And this kind of partnering with these emerging economies and then develop policy proposal together will be a very crucial way to make impacts. And I think the CCETs and then the team of this JIFE team is doing both in that way. And I think that is a way we need to go forward.
Okay, thank you very much for your very valuable comments. And hearing your comments, I believe IGES, after 20 years after the establishment of IGES, we have already established a very good network and partnership with member countries and communities. So I think it is very important to fully utilize this accumulation of our experiences, and we should continue to and further strengthen our role as a change agent in Asia Pacific region. And we should make very timely contributions towards sustainable future in coming so-called decisive decade until 2030. So thank you very much for all your speakers for your very positive and constructive inputs to this workshop. And I have to now conclude this session today. So I would like to thank all of you for joining this session, and I hope this discussion was both fruitful and insightful. Actually, ISAP 2021 is ongoing through the 3rd of December, so I hope to see you in other sessions or at the next ISAP. So thank you very much.